Yo, what's up, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Stone TV. This is day 2 of the Stone TV's 8 Days of Autumn special. And if you've already read the caption and you've seen the title of this episode, you already know what movie we're doing. We're doing Shrek. Now, I know what you're thinking. Stone, why are you doing Shrek? Shrek ain't no Halloween movie. It ain't got nothing to do with fall, nothing to do with autumn. Why are you doing a Shrek movie? Now, let me just give you a brief history of why I'm doing this movie and why I love this movie so much. All right. When I was a kid and I was in an after school program at my elementary school, the teacher who ran the after school program, for some reason, would play this movie. Now, I don't know if she did this shit multiple times or just this one night, but I remember this night like it was yesterday. It was one of the happiest moments of my life as a child, okay? I remember her playing this movie and everybody in the cafeteria had their costumes on and everybody was all dressed up. We were eating candy and cookies and all types of stuff, and she had this movie on. And I remember sitting there watching this movie and playing and just having a good ass time. And so ever since then, I always just associated Shrek with Halloween and fall, and it just reminds me of the nostalgic feeling that I had when I was watching it. And until the day I die, I'm always going to probably be watching this movie around Halloween. So if you don't think it's a Halloween movie, I don't really give a fuck. This ain't your show. If you don't want to hear me talking about Shrek and it's not a Halloween movie, you can turn this bill fuck off. Because we finna talk about Shrek. Now let's get into it. Yo, Shrek is a 2001 cartoon fantasy movie directed by Andrew Adamson and Vicky Jenson. And it was written by Ted Elliott, Terry Rossio, whatever the fuck, Joe Stillman, and Roger Schulman. Shrek 2001, okay, is the first movie in the Shrek movie series, and it stars Mike Myers, not Michael Myers, but Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, Cameron Diaz, and John Lithgow. Now, in this movie, Myers plays an antisocial ogre named Shrek, who was by either chance or fate forced to go on this quest with a loudmouth, forever-talking donkey played by Murphy after finding his home in the swamp overrun by a bunch of fairy tale creatures who are banned by the abusive ruler Lord Farquaad, played by John Lithgow. Now, our movie begins with Shrek reading a book about a fairy tale princess who gets rescued by a brave knight, and although reading the story, Shrek calls this story a bunch of bullshit, rips the pages out of the book, and wipes his ass with it. You know why? Because he can't. Why? Because ain't nobody gonna tell him he can't. That's why. Alright? Yeah, that happened. He then proceeds to do some more nasty shit by showering in a bunch of mud and taking a bath in swamp water, which he farted in. Why? Because he's an ogre and they do nasty shit, apparently. Alright? After making himself something to eat, which was a bowl of eyeballs and a slug, a big ass slug that he found in the swamp, okay, for dessert, Shrek notices a bunch of villagers are attempting to come into his swamp and kill him. And he decides he gonna sneak up behind them and scare the shit out of him for trying to fuck up his night. Now, after scaring them half to death, Shrek finds a flyer that says wanted fairy tale creatures and realizes the villagers didn't come to kill him, but they came to capture him. Alright. The next day, somewhere in the forest, a bunch of fairy tale creatures are being sold either by their owners or by their captors and are being imprisoned by Lord Farquaad's knights. Now, in this scene, we are introduced to Donkey, who was about to be sold by his owner. Donkey pleads with his owner, begging her not to sell him, but she ignores his cries and tries to sell him anyway. When she claims that she has a talking donkey after she gets to the front of the line, Donkey goes silent. And the knights believe that she is lying, get mad, and order her to be taken away for wasting their time. However, she fights and accidentally kicks a locked cage that has a fairy in it, and knocks it on top of Donkey's head. The fairy dust allows him to float, and Donkey is so excited by his newfound powers that he starts talking a bunch of shit to the knights as if he's about to get away. Now, if anybody don't seen this scene in this movie, they already know how hilarious Eddie Murphy is in this scene. That nigga starts talking a whole bunch of shit. Talk about, yeah, that's right, fool. Now I'm a flying talkie donkey. And I'm about to spin off on y'all niggas, bro. Like, this shit is so funny, bro. Unfortunately, he loses his ability to fly while he's talking all that shit and has to run through the forest, run through the woods to save his life. While running through the forest, Donkey accidentally runs into Shrek and hides behind them, hoping Shrek will save him from the knights who are chasing him closely behind. Shrek protects Donkey by making the knights run away in fear, and that's what starts the unintentional friendship. After Donkey annoyingly thanks Shrek for saving his life, he annoyingly begs Shrek to let him stay with him for the night. Now, Shrek's house, after he agrees to let Donkey stay with him, after Shrek allows him against his better judgment to stay with him, Shrek's house and swamp gets invaded by the same fairy tale creatures that were being locked and imprisoned by Lord Farquaad's knights. And they tell him that Lord Farquaad has banished them to the swamp and they have nowhere else to go. This immediately pisses Shrek off to the point to where him and Donkey head off towards Duloc, which is Farquaad's kingdom. After they get there, they lay the smack down, and I mean the smack down, okay, like fucking Stone Cold and The Rock, whoop the fuck out of Lord Farquaad's knights, and demand Farquaad get rid of these fairy tale creatures out of their swamp. Now I say they because at this point, that nigga Donkey thinks just because he stayed one night, which he barely even stayed a full night, he thinks he has part ownership of the swamp. And Shrek is like, nigga, you don't own shit, but you coming with me though. It is what it is. But Farquaad, instead of giving him back his swamp, he makes a deal with Shrek and says, if you rescue my princess, I will give you your swamp back. And with the help of Donkey, Shrek makes a pact with Farquaad to rescue Princess Fiona, who is played by Diaz, in exchange to regain control of his swamp. Now, I was asking these questions, Donkey was asking these questions, and I'm still wondering why the fuck he just didn't beat that nigga ass. But then I started to think that maybe it's because Shrek probably just don't want to fight like that, and he only fights to survive, and he really only fights to keep motherfuckers who don't like him anyway off of his swamp. And that just sounds like a motherfucker who just, he's like misunderstood. He wants to be left alone. But I think at some point he kind of, he wants to be loved too, which is why I think he kind of, against his better judgment, allowed Donkey to come fuck with him and then go on his quest with him. But that's just my theory. That's just my opinion. Whatever. Moving on. Okay. After accepting Farquaad's deal to get his swamp back, Shrek and Donkey travel to the castle where Fiona is being held and are attacked by a dragon. While fighting the dragon, Donkey is captured and Shrek is thrown high up in the sky, causing him to crash through the roof of the castle where Princess Fiona is being held. Now, while Shrek is knocked out on the floor, Fiona wakes up and sees him lying down. And thinking that she's his knight in shining armor, she picks up a bouquet of flowers and lays back down pretending like she's asleep. Now, while Shrek is knocked out on the castle floor, Donkey is being held by the dragon and is basically sexually harassed. That's not a joke. If you have not seen this movie, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking, but basically Donkey is being sexually harassed by the dragon, who turns out to be a female and finds Donkey to be very attractive. Meanwhile, Shrek wakes up and locates Fiona, the princess, who is pretending like she's asleep. Fiona, having already awakened from the crash, lays there pretending like she's asleep and waits for her brave knight, quote unquote, to rescue her with awakening her with a kiss of true love. However, this ain't no knight in shining armor, and this ain't no true love moment. Shrek slowly walks over to her bed, and violently wakes her up by shaking her awake. Fiona wakes up and is like, "What?" Shrek says, "Are you Princess Fiona?" She said, "Yes, waiting for a knight so brave to rescue me." I watched this movie a lot. Kiss my ass. He's like, she's all like, "Yes, I'm waiting for a knight to rescue me," or whatever. He's like, "Oh, well, that's nice. I ain't got time for all that shit." And he yanks her out of bed. He yanks her out of bed. And she's like, "Yo, this is supposed to be a romantic moment." He's like, "Ain't nobody got time for all that shit." Shrek grabs Fiona and runs to the castle. All right. Fiona is appalled while Shrek is looking for Donkey so they can leave. Fiona, who is appalled by his lack of romanticism, is very unhappy how she has been rescued and wants Shrek to be more like the other knights who tried to rescue her in the past. To which Shrek said, "You mean them niggas who got burnt up and all died trying to rescue your ass?" That nigga was like, "I'm not finna die for you. You ain't even my bitch for real." She's all like, "That ain't the point." She's like, "The point is," Shrek is like, "The point is, I ain't dying for you. I ain't even here for you like that. You ain't my bitch." So Shrek devises a plan to rescue Donkey while Fiona is pissed that this nigga is not acting like her knight in shining armor. And after rescuing Donkey, they flee the castle, leaving the dragon heartbroken that Donkey has left her. When they're in the clear, Fiona demands Shrek removes his helmet and reveals himself, but he declines. Fiona, with an attitude unlike any other princess, screams at Shrek and forces him to take off his helmet, which at this point he does just to shut her up. At this moment, it is revealed to her that Shrek is an ogre. Fiona, rightfully so, gets upset, seeing how in her mind her rescuer was supposed to be a handsome Prince Charming and her true love. But when Shrek tells her he's not even here because he wants to marry her, she refuses to go with him to Duloc and demands that Farquaad arrive in person to save her. Shrek, fed up with her attitude, tells her he ain't no messenger boy. He's a delivery boy. And Fiona's like, "Motherfucker, you won't touch me." Shrek says, "You want to make a bet?" Shrek picks her scrawny ass up and carries her against her will, kicking and screaming. As time goes on, all right, the sun begins to go down, and Fiona demands that they stop and make camp. Shrek says, "Fuck that, we moving on," but Fiona ain't having it, talking about we stopping right here and right now, and pushes a hard line on Shrek to the point to where him and Donkey are forced to stop and make camp. Now, later that night, after setting up camp with Fiona alone in her cave, Shrek confides with Donkey, and this is like a moment where you get to see that Shrek isn't really this heartless ass, monstrous ass creature that everybody thinks he is. All right. Later that night, after setting up camp with Fiona alone in her cave, Shrek confides with Donkey about his frustrations with being feared and rejected by others just over his appearance. All right. Him and Donkey have a heart-to-heart. When Fiona overhears this, the next day she decides to be kind to Shrek, as she herself knows what it's like to be judged based off of her looks. All right. The next morning, the three of them are harassed by Robin Hood and his men, where Fiona gets to breaking her fucking where Fiona gets to breaking her foot off with Robin Hood's ass, using her martial arts skills, once again proving that she's not your typical princess. Shrek becomes impressed by Fiona's ass-kicking skills, and they secretly start to fall in love with each other. Alright. Now, the movie moves on as the three of them finally make it to Duloc. With the sun going down, and after these guys have been romantically sending each other subliminal signals the entire quest, Fiona takes shelter in a windmill for the night, And Donkey later enters alone and discovers the very shocking secret that Fiona has transformed into an ogre. All right. She explains to him after Donkey's like, yo, you ate the princess. He's all calling for Shrek. This other shit. He's not believing that it's her because she's completely turned into a female ogre. Now, Fiona convinces and basically convinces Donkey that she is Princess Fiona. And she explains to him that since she was a child, she has been cursed and is forced to turn into an ogre every night until only to change back at sunrise. She tells Donkey that the only way her curse can be broken is by true love's kiss. And with the true love's kiss, she will take the form of whoever her true love is. Now, meanwhile, Shrek, outside pacing back and forth, is about to confess his feelings to Fiona when he overhears that Fiona is referring to herself as an ugly beast. Only hearing part of the story, okay, Shrek, believing that she is talking about him, gets mad, like, fuck this bitch, I'm out of here, and leaves for Duloc to let Farquaad know that his bitch is in the windmill not far from his castle, and if he want her, he better go get her. Alright? The next morning, Shrek shows up, pissed off, with Farquaad and his men, maybe a few feet behind him. Farquaad shows up with his men to get Fiona, and while Fiona is trying to talk with Shrek about her curse, Shrek, still pissed off over what he thought he heard, he says that he brushes her off and acts as if she ain't shit to him now. Fiona, confused and hurt by Shrek's attitude, Fiona has no choice but to accept Farquaad's marriage proposal and request that they be married before nightfall, because she's worried that he may find out her secret and not want to marry her anymore. Now, while she's leaving, Shrek and Donkey get into a fight about what she told him, but Shrek ain't trying to hear none of that shit that Donkey is trying to say, and he ain't trying to hear that shit. He gotta say, and he abandons Donkey in the woods by himself and returns to his now vacated swamp where all the fairy tale creatures have been forced out and told to go somewhere else. Now, once he's home, he quickly realizes that despite his privacy, he feels miserable and misses Fiona and maybe even Donkey a little bit too. There's a scene where Fiona is missing the shit out of Shrek just as well, and the two of them have sad moments over one of the greatest songs that you can hear in this entire movie. Okay, it's not the best, but it's one of the greatest songs out of this entire movie. And to me, I still listen to that song, but that's just me. But while Shrek, moving on, whatever. While Shrek and Fiona at opposite ends of the kingdom, missing the hell out of each other, Donkey runs into Dragon, who was crying alone in the woods, and he comforts her, leading the two of them to fall in love with each other. Now, don't ask me a motherfucking thing about how this works, because I don't know. It's been 22 years since this movie came out, and I still don't know how the fuck we let that happen. Okay? How the fuck did we let a donkey and a dragon get together, have babies, and have donkey and dragon babies? Yeah, I'm spoiling for the other movies because I don't understand how the fuck we allowed that to happen. That big ass fucking dragon and that small ass donkey. I mean, talk about having a donkey dick though, for real, because this nigga fucked that dragon and got her pregnant and had some babies. Yeah. The whole Shrek franchise is fucking, I don't know. Watching it as an adult, you see so much shit. I mean, you saw this shit when you were a kid, but I mean, seeing it as an adult is still like, what the fuck? Don't ask me a motherfucking thing about how that shit works. Like I said, 22 years later, I still don't fucking know. Moving on. uh, um, Donkey returns to the swamp. Okay, after finding the dragon and all that other shit, Donkey returns to the swamp and confronts Shrek, explaining to him that the ugly beast Fiona was referring to was somebody else, and urges him to express his feeling to Fiona before she marries the wrong man. The two of them apologize to each other and quickly travel to Duloc by riding on top of the dragon's back. Now, once they arrive at Duloc, Shrek interrupts the wedding just before the ceremony is completed and tells Fiona that Farquaad is only marrying her so that he can become king and that he loves her. Farquaad says, "Don't nobody give a fuck about your feelings, nigga." Farquaad said that's a bunch of bullshit and nobody cares about your fucking feelings, and he tries to force Fiona to kiss him just so that he can become king. Now, Fiona says, Fiona stops and says, "I wanted to show you this before I got here," because basically she's been in love with him too. The sun begins to set as Fiona is transformed into an ogre in front of everyone, causing Shrek to finally understand what he overheard in that night in the windmill. Now, outraged and disgusted by Fiona's look, Farquaad orders Shrek to be killed and Fiona put back into her castle, where she would spend the rest of her days unloved and unappreciated as an ogre for the rest of her life. However, to Farquaad's surprise, the two of them are saved when Donkey and the Dragon break in and Farquaad is eaten alive by Dragon. Yeah. This movie is fucking... Man. After Farquaad's death, Shrek and Fiona confess their love for each other and the two share a kiss. And although Fiona's curse is now broken, because she kissed her true love, this permanently makes her into an ogre. However, this makes Fiona very sad because she thinks she's ugly and princesses aren't supposed to be ugly, they're supposed to be beautiful. But Shrek tells her, "You a bad bitch to me," and that he still finds her beautiful. The movie ends with the two of them getting married in the swamp with all the fairy tale creatures in attendance and them leaving for their honeymoon, with Donkey singing "I Believe" as they are driving away in their onion-pulled carriage. Now, this movie is fucking phenomenal. I don't give a fuck what anybody has to say. I don't care what anybody thinks. To me, this movie will always be great. It has a lot of subliminal adult shit that happens in this movie, but it also tells you a lot about what people think traditional love and, fairy tales and princesses and just even princes are supposed to look like. Here's a movie that tells you that you don't have to be beautiful to find true love. Okay? It's a great movie. And it has a very deep meaning to the movie if you look at it in the way of it telling you that true love comes in every shape and sizes, and there is no conventional way love or happiness should look. Okay? Shrek is one of those movies that gave you the sense that love was possible of finding no matter if you live in a swamp or in a fucking castle. All right? This is a great movie. Every kid should watch this movie. It would definitely stand the test of time. As a kid, I gave it a 10 out of 10. For a nostalgic rating, I gave it a 10 out of 10. And for me watching it as a fucking adult, it's still a 10 out of 10. This is a great movie. And if you have not seen it, you better go fucking watch it. Because it's one of those dope ass fucking movies. And that's all I got to say about this shit. For real. Go watch the movie. Thank you for listening to the podcast. And we out this bitch. Peace.